Most traders believe the problem is strategy. If they just had a better system, a cleaner setup, a higher win rate, then calm would come naturally. But that belief is exactly why calm never arrives, because calm is not the reward for having a good strategy. Calm is the prerequisite for executing any strategy the same way twice. You don't fail to trade calmly because your strategy is weak. You fail because the strategy activates beliefs you've never examined. The market is not testing your analysis. It's testing your relationship with uncertainty. A good strategy does not remove risk. It never has, and it never will. What it actually does is far more uncomfortable. It exposes exactly what you believe about risk, loss, and uncertainty. Most traders don't realize this because they approach strategy as protection. They believe that if the rules are precise enough, if the edge is proven enough, then fear should disappear. But fear doesn't disappear with structure. Fear becomes louder when structure removes excuses. Before a trader has a clear strategy, losses can be blamed on confusion. Wins can be credited to instinct. Everything feels flexible. But the moment a strategy is well-defined, entry rules, exit rules, position sizing, the psychological mirror turns on. Now every action is visible, every deviation is measurable, and every emotional response has nowhere to hide. This is where most traders feel surprised. They say, I finally have a good strategy, so why do I feel more pressure instead of less? The answer is simple. Risk has stopped being abstract. It has become personal. Risk is not the possibility of losing money. That's just the surface. Risk is the possibility that the market will contradict your expectations and force you to confront something about yourself you don't want to see. A good strategy increases that confrontation. It doesn't soften it. When the rules are clear, every trade becomes a choice rather than a guess, and choices activate beliefs. If you hesitate on a valid setup, it's not because the setup isn't good. It's because acting exposes you to uncertainty without emotional guarantees. If you exit early, it's not because the trade felt wrong. It's because staying in requires tolerating discomfort longer than your belief system allows. The market is neutral. It doesn't know your strategy exists. It doesn't know you're disciplined today or scared tomorrow. But your mind reacts as if every outcome is a statement about you. That reaction is not random. It comes from beliefs you've been accumulating long before you ever placed a trade. Most people were taught, directly or indirectly, that mistakes equal failure. That loss means you did something wrong. That being wrong too often is unacceptable. These beliefs work reasonably well in environments where outcomes are controllable. Trading is not one of those environments. A strategy based on probability guarantees one thing: you will be wrong frequently. Even the best edges lose. Even perfect execution includes drawdowns. A good strategy does not promise comfort. It promises randomness with a favorable distribution over time. If you believe that being wrong is dangerous, embarrassing, or threatening, that randomness will feel intolerable. So the trader tries to compensate emotionally. They start managing trades not according to rules but according to feelings. They tighten stops to avoid regret. They skip trades to avoid disappointment. They double down to avoid admitting error. None of this is accidental. It is belief-consistent behavior. This is why two traders can trade the same strategy with the same rules and get completely different results. The difference is not intelligence. It's not discipline in the traditional sense. It's belief compatibility. One trader accepts risk as a cost of doing business. The other experiences risk as a personal threat. The strategy doesn't change. The market doesn't change. Only the internal meaning assigned to uncertainty changes. A good strategy forces you to face this because it removes ambiguity. When you know, without question, that a setup meets your criteria, hesitation becomes psychological, not analytic. When you know your stop placement is correct, moving it becomes emotional, not strategic. The strategy exposes the exact point where belief overrides logic. And this is where most traders misdiagnose the problem. They think they need more confidence, or more discipline, or more screen time. What they actually need is belief realignment. Confidence does not come from winning. Discipline does not come from willpower. Calm does not come from certainty. Byproducts of accepting risk at a level deeper than words. You can say you accept risk, but your behavior will reveal the truth. If you feel compelled to interfere with trades, you have not accepted risk. You've only accepted the idea of risk as long as it doesn't hurt. The market does not respond to what you say you believe. It responds to what you act on under pressure. A good strategy increases that pressure because it removes confusion. And when confusion is gone, beliefs take over. This is why traders often say they felt calmer before they became serious. When everything was vague, expectations were loose. Losses were disappointing but not threatening. But once money size increases and rules tighten, every outcome feels heavier. The trader thinks the pressure comes from money. In reality, it comes from meaning. Money is just the scoreboard. Meaning is what makes the score hurt. A good strategy teaches you something very specific. You are not uncomfortable because risk exists. You are uncomfortable because you want guarantees in an environment that offers none. You want certainty where probability is the only currency, and that conflict creates emotional friction. The solution is not to eliminate risk. That's impossible. The solution is to change your relationship with it. Risk must become impersonal. Loss must become expected. Outcomes must become irrelevant in isolation. Until that happens, every trade will feel like a test and every loss will feel like a verdict. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop identifying. When you stop identifying with individual outcomes, the strategy finally does what it was always capable of doing, expressing an edge over time. But that expression only happens when you stop interfering. Interference is not a technical problem. It's a psychological one, and the strategy exposes it because it removes all other explanations. That's why a good strategy feels uncomfortable at first. It strips away illusion. It shows you that the real work was never about entries and exits. It was about whether you could operate in uncertainty without needing emotional validation from the market. The market will never reassure you. It will never tell you you're smart. It will never promise the next trade will work. A good strategy forces you to accept that and act anyway. Once you truly accept that risk is not the enemy, once you understand that uncertainty is not a problem to solve but a condition to operate within, something shifts. The need to see control disappears. The urge to predict fades. Execution becomes simple. Not easy, simple. And in that simplicity, calm emerges, not because the risk is gone, but because your resistance to it is. That is what a good strategy really does. It doesn't make trading safer. It makes your beliefs visible. You're not reacting to the trade itself. That's the illusion. What you're reacting to is the possibility of emotional pain that the trade might deliver. The market becomes the trigger, but the real reaction happens inside you, long before price reaches your stop or your target. If this weren't true, every trader would behave rationally the moment a setup appears. But they don't. They hesitate, rush, interfere, freeze, or overcommit, not because the trade is unclear, but because of what the outcome might make them feel. The mind is not built to deal with probability. It is built to avoid pain, and in trading, pain is not defined by losing money. It is defined by the emotional consequence attached to being wrong. Regret, disappointment, embarrassment, self-doubt, and the quiet fear of confirming a negative belief about yourself. These are the real threats the nervous system is responding to. This is why traders often say things like, "I knew I shouldn't have taken that trade," or "I got out because it didn't feel right," or "I just wanted to lock something in." These statements sound logical on the surface, but underneath them is a simple motive, emotional protection. The trader is not managing risk. They are managing how much discomfort they are willing to tolerate. A trade, by itself, has no emotional content. It is just an event with multiple possible outcomes. But the moment you assign meaning to those outcomes, the trade stops being neutral. If a loss means failure, the trade becomes dangerous. If a win means validation, the trade becomes necessary. And once a trade becomes necessary or dangerous, calm disappears. Most traders believe fear shows up after they LOS. That's not accurate. Fear shows up before the trade because the mind is already projecting the emotional aftermath of loss. The body reacts to that imagined future as if it is happening now. Heart rate increases, focus narrows, urgency appears. The trader feels pressure to do something, to act, to avoid, to control. That pressure has nothing to do with market conditions. It has everything to do with emotional anticipation. This is why traders can experience intense anxiety even in a simulated environment or with very small position sizes. The emotional reaction is not proportional to the financial risk. It is proportional to the meaning attached to the outcome. You can reduce size to almost nothing and still feel tense if losing symbolizes something unacceptable to you. And here's the critical point most traders miss. The market doesn't create emotional pain. It reveals it. The pain was already there, embedded in beliefs formed long before trading ever began. Beliefs about success, intelligence, competence, and self-worth. Trading simply activates them because it produces frequent, unavoidable feedback. You are constantly being told in very direct terms whether your expectations were correct or not. For a mind that equates being wrong with being inadequate, this environment feels hostile. So the trader starts reacting to the potential of emotional injury rather than the actual risk of the trade. They exit early because they can't tolerate watching open profit fluctuate. They skip trades because they can't tolerate the possibility of immediate loss. They overtrade after a loss because they can't tolerate sitting with disappointment. None of this is random. It is emotional self-defense. The irony is that these reactions create the very results the trader is trying to avoid. Early exits reduce expectancy. Skip trades distort the edge. Overtrading increases losses. The trader ends up confirming the negative beliefs they were trying to escape. The market didn't do that. The reaction did. Calm trading requires a fundamental shift in perspective, accepting that emotional pain is not something to be avoided at all costs. It is something to be understood and eventually neutralized by removing the meaning that creates it. You cannot trade calmly while believing that certain emotions are unacceptable. If you believe that frustration means weakness, you will panic when it appears. If you believe that doubt means incompetence, you will rush to escape it. The mind will always choose short-term emotional relief over long-term consistency unless you consciously redefine what emotions mean. This is why simply controlling emotions never works. Control implies suppression. Suppression creates resistance. Resistance amplifies the very thing you're trying to eliminate. The trader who tries not to feel fear ends up being ruled by it. The trader who tries to feel confident becomes dependent on winning. The goal is not to feel good. The goal is to feel neutral. Neutrality comes from recognizing that emotions are informational, not directive. Fear is not a command to exit. Anxiety is not a signal to avoid. Discomfort is not a reason to interfere. These sensations are echoes of old beliefs encountering an uncertain environment. When you stop reacting to emotions as if they require immediate action, they lose their power. The sensation may still arise, but it no longer dictates behavior. This is where true discipline begins, not in forcing yourself to act against fear, but in no longer treating fear as a threat. A trader who is calm understands that emotional discomfort is part of the cost of participation. Just like losses are a financial cost, emotions are a psychological cost. Neither is optional. Both must be paid if you want access to opportunity. Once this is accepted, the relationship with trades changes. Each trade stops being a referendum on your ability. It becomes just another instance in a long series. The urgency fades. The need for immediate resolution disappears. You no longer need the trade to work to feel okay. And that's the paradox. The moment you stop needing emotional safety from the market stops provoking you. You can sit through drawdowns without panic. You can let winners fluctuate without grabbing. You can follow your rules without negotiating with your feelings. Not because you've eliminated emotion, but because you've removed its authority. The trade was never the problem. The market was never the enemy. The real challenge was learning to experience uncertainty without demanding emotional guarantees. When you do that, calm is no longer something you try to achieve. It becomes a natural state because there is nothing left to protect. And in that state, trading becomes what it was always meant to be, a process of execution, not emotional survival. Calm does not arrive when the market finally behaves. It does not appear when volatility drops, when your win rate IM proves, or when you string together a few good trades. Calm comes when you trust the process more than you trust your feelings. And for most traders, that is one of the hardest transitions to make, because feelings are immediate, convincing, and loud, while a process is quiet, patient, and indifferent to how you feel in the moment. Feelings are designed for survival, not for probability-based decision-making. They evolve to help you react quickly to danger, not to sit still while uncertainty plays out over time. In trading, this creates a constant internal conflict. The process says, follow the rules and let the edge unfold. Feelings say, do something right now to feel better. When the two disagree, feelings almost always win, unless the trader has learned to give the process authority. Most traders don't actually trust their process, even when they say they do. They trust it conditionally. They trust it when they feel confident. They trust it after a win. They trust it when the market is calm and predictable. But the moment discomfort appears, trust evaporates. That tells you everything you need to know. What they were trusting wasn't the process, it was their emotional state. A process, by definition, includes losing trades, drawdowns, and periods of underperformance. If your trust disappears during those moments, then trust was never there in the first place. It was agreement, not commitment. Feelings are persuasive because they feel true. Fear feels like a warning. Confidence feels like clarity. Urgency feels like opportunity. But feelings do not understand probability. They respond to what might happen, not to what is statistically meaningful over time. That's why a single losing trade can feel catastrophic, even though it means nothing in the context of a large sample size. When you trust your feelings more than your process, you end up trading your emotional cycle instead of your edge. After a win, you feel invincible and take marginal setups. After a loss, you feel cautious and skip good trades. After a string of losses, you feel desperate and overtrade. The market hasn't changed, but your behavior has, because your feelings are now in control. This is not a discipline problem. It's a hierarchy problem. You have placed feelings above structure, and whatever sits at the top of the hierarchy dictates behavior. Calm emerges when you reverse that order. Trusting the process means you act according to rules regardless of how you feel. Not because you're forcing yourself, but because you understand that feelings are not qualified to make trading decisions. They are allowed to exist, but they are not allowed to vote. This doesn't happen through positive thinking or emotional suppression. It happens through repeated, deliberate experiences of following the process while feeling uncomfortable and seeing that nothing breaks. You take the trade even though you feel hesitant. You hold the trade even though you feel anxious. You exit according to plan even though you feel hopeful. Over time, the nervous system learns something critical. Discomfort is not dangerous. That learning cannot happen intellectually. It must happen experientially. The market teaches it through repetition, but only if you allow the lesson to occur by not intervening. Most traders intervene too early. They rescue themselves emotionally before the process can do its work. They move stops, take profits early, or avoid entries just to relieve tension. Each time they do this, they reinforce the belief that feelings must be obeyed. Calm stays out of reach because the mind never learns that it is safe to let uncertainty exist. Trusting the process, LSO, means accepting delayed gratification. The process does not reward you immediately. It rewards you over a series of trades. Feelings, on the other hand, demand immediate resolution. They want certainty now, relief now, validation now. When you side with feelings, you sacrifice long-term consistency for short-term comfort. This is why traders who chase calm through external changes never find it. They change strategies, timeframes, markets, indicators, hoping to find something that feels better. But the discomfort is not coming from the tools, it's coming from the mismatch between expectation and reality. Trading is uncertain, feelings want certainty. Until that mismatch is resolved internally, no external change will help. A trader who trusts the process understands that outcomes are independent. The last trade has no influence on the next one. Your feelings about the last trade have no predictive value. The edge exists whether you feel confident or afraid. Acting on feelings introduces randomness where there doesn't need to be any. Calm is not emotional numbness. It is emotional irrelevance. You still feel hesitation, you still feel excitement, you still feel disappointment. But those feelings no longer alter your behavior. They pass through without hijacking the process. This is the point where trading becomes simple. Not easy, but simple. The rules are followed. Risk is predefined. Execution is consistent. The mind stops negotiating with itself on every trade. And once that happens, something surprising occurs. Feelings begin to quiet down on their own. Not because you fought them, but because you stopped feeding them with reaction. The nervous system adapts to what you repeatedly show it as normal. If you repeatedly act calmly in the presence of uncertainty, calm becomes the baseline. Trusting the process more than your feelings is not an act of faith. It is a recognition of competence. You are acknowledging that the process was designed with more intelligence than your moment-to-moment emotional reactions. You are choosing long-term statistical truth over short-term psychological comfort. This is where confidence actually comes from, not from winning trades, but from knowing that you will do the same thing regardless of outcome. Confidence is the byproduct of self-trust, and self-trust is built by honoring your process when it's hardest to do so. The market will always provide reasons to feel something. It will tempt you with excitement and threaten you with fear. Those signals never stop. But when the process is in charge, they lose their influence. Calm, then, is not something you achieve by controlling the market or controlling yourself. It emerges naturally when you asking feelings to guide you in an environment they were never designed to navigate. You trust the process. You execute. You let the outcomes be what they are. And in that simplicity, Calm is no longer an effort. It is just the way you trade. Calm is not something the market gives you, and it's not something you force into existence. It is the natural result of putting the process above your feelings, again and again, until trust replaces reaction. When you stop asking trades to make you feel safe, confident, or validated, they lose their emotional weight. You execute because the rules say execute, not because you feel ready. And in that shift, fear no longer controls behavior. The market stays uncertain. Outcomes stay unpredictable, but you stay consistent. That consistency is where real calm lives.